Arguments were heard in court today to potentially settle an issue that has many on Guam divided over a vote for Guam's self-determination. Attorneys for the plaintiff, Dave Davis, argue that Davis is being discriminated against by not being able to vote for Guam's plebiscite, and Gov Guam argues that the plebiscite is not even an official election. Here's more.
It was Christian Adams representing Dave Davis and Julian Uggan representing Gov Guam. Both men argued today on a variety of topics involving Guam's plebiscite. The lawsuit stems from an argument over the right to vote in Guam's plebiscite for self-determination. Davis says his constitutional rights were violated when he was not allowed to register in the decolonization registry. Only those who are native inhabitants of Guam when the 1950 Organic Act of Guam was ratified and their descendants can register to vote, and the vote will only happen when 70% of all eligible voters are registered. Attorney Adams early on outlined the key issues in this case, whether or not ancestry equals race. Adams says this is a key issue in a lawsuit brought to Judge Francis Tedinko Gatewood, in which the plaintiff, Dave Davis, is arguing that his inability to participate in a vote for Guam self-determination is a violation of his fundamental right to vote.
The right to vote is a fundamental right. It applies to everybody equally, and people have a right to participate in the political process. It's in the Constitution, it's in the Organic Act.
Adams cites multiple court cases from the Supreme Court and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that he says validates Davis's fundamental argument in this case.
The Supreme Court has said that ancestral qualifications, who your grandfather was, who your daddy was, that's the same thing as race. When you start using blood to determine who gets to vote, blood should not be a requirement for voting rights. It's what this country got rid of when it had a civil war and civil rights movement.
Meanwhile, attorney Julian Uggan representing Gov Guam argued a very simple point, a point he says renders Davis's argument invalid.
One of our chief contentions was that a purely symbolic political status plebiscite is simply beyond the reach of the 15th Amendment or the Voting Rights Act. We believe that neither of those things cover the political status plebiscite at issue in this case. And so, of course, we believe that plaintiff Dave Davis is simply not entitled to the relief that he seeks in this court.
Uggan additionally argued that time and time again, federal court has upheld the notion that people who live in territories do not have a fundamental right to U.S. citizenship. He points to the recent case of Segovia v. Illinois and Tuaua v. United States. This, as he says, invalidates one of the foundations of Davis's, which is that he has a fundamental right to vote for Guam self-determination. Uggan argued that a plebiscite vote is not an election as defined in the 15th Amendment, rather, quote, an expression of political opinion among a federally created class of citizens. Uggan says the plebiscite is not completely valid because if a vote is ever taken, it is completely up to Congress whether to acknowledge that vote or not. An election, as defined in the 15th Amendment, determines either a matter of public policy or the election of a public servant. The Guam plebiscite vote does neither of those things.
In the courtroom, they say the plebiscite vote doesn't matter, and outside the courtroom, they talk about how important it is. What's happening with that is the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has already cut that argument off. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, when it reversed this judge the first time, said that the vote does matter, that it involves public issues, so they're not going to win on that one.
Uggan says it's the people's contentions that the people of Guam are entitled to a judgment.
It is the people's contention that plaintiff Dave Davis simply has not carried his burden under either the Constitution or the statutes of the United States, and that we the defendants, the people of Guam, are entitled to judgment as a matter of law.
Throughout the proceedings, the defense argued that Guam is an unincorporated territory, citing multiple court cases, and it is concludedly not a state and should not be treated like one. The defense did note that if Judge Gatewood denies the motions, then Gov Guam will go to trial. Judge Gatewood took both motions under advisement. For PNC News, I'm Tim Blaswick-Henry.
The lead plaintiff in the case, Dave Davis, was not present for oral arguments.